In the headlines, 5 people escaped from a Sydney cafe where a gunman took an unknown number of hostages. The gunman is reportedly demanding an ISIS flag and a phone call with Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Japanese Prime Minister Abe pledges to move forward with his economic revitalization plans after winning control of the lower house of parliament in weekend elections. And North Korea pledges to open a new era under Kim Jong-un's leadership ahead of the 3-year anniversary of the death of former leader Kim Jong-il. Hello and welcome to the program, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri. We begin with the hostage situation in Sydney, where police say dozens have been held captive since Monday morning local time. And for more, we now go live to Paul Lee, who has been following this story. So, Paul, what's the latest?
Well, about 6 hours into the siege, we saw 5 hostages making a dramatic escape from inside the Lindt Chocolate Cafe, which is located in downtown Sydney. The Korean consulate there has confirmed that one of them is a Korean Australian who is being held inside. Police are currently interviewing those who have gotten out, but it's unclear at this point whether they escaped on their own or if they were released by their captor. Amid the standoff, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott addressed the nation and urged people to stay calm.
Australia is a peaceful, open and generous society. Nothing should ever change that, and that's why I would urge all Australians today to go about their business as usual.
Abbott also provided a national security hotline should people suspect that another attack is in the works. He is scheduled to provide another update in just a few hours.
So police have not identified yet who is behind this siege, but there have been photos of people holding up a black flag with white Arabic writing on it.
That's right. The flag raised suspicions that the attack could be linked to Islamic State militants, and some local news networks have reportedly made contact with those trapped inside the cafe, and they say that the lone gunman is threatening that 4 bombs have been planted around the city. Our police have warned against any speculation.
We cannot be engaged in any speculation, but let it also be reassured that we are monitoring all forms of communication, whether that is Facebook or Twitter, for any information that might assist. It's really important that you pass it on, because even a smallest snippet of information might be vital.
Local and federal authorities have cordoned off the area and are also temporarily controlling the airspace above Sydney. They added that the number of hostages still inside cannot be confirmed at this point, but they said the number is lower than 30. Chedi?
And obviously, Paul, this is a very fluid situation that we'll have to continue to keep an eye on for any developments. Paul E. there reporting live from the ARIRANG News Center. Thank you so much. Now, moving on to the other story of the day, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has successfully maintained a majority in Japan's lower house, but the record low voter turnout showed that Abe needs to step up his game as well. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Japan's ruling coalition won a landslide victory in parliamentary elections seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's economic policy. Abe's Liberal Democratic Party, together with its junior partner Komeito, retained a 2/3 majority of 475 seats in the lower house of parliament, giving them the power to pass legislation without recourse to the upper house.
I'm relieved we've managed to continue our ruling coalition with the Komeito party, but at the same time, this is also a great responsibility.
It was a crushing defeat for the main opposition Democratic Party of Japan, falling well short of the 100 seats it had unofficially targeted. Many observers say the lack of a clear political alternative to the ruling party left many voters feeling underwhelmed and questioning the need of an election in the first place. And as if reflecting the people's indifference, voter turnout was 52%, the lowest figure since World War II, and well short of the previous low of 59% set in 2012. Abe is now widely expected to push ahead with expanding the role of the military and restarting Japan's nuclear power plants. The win also gives the Prime Minister a fresh 4-year mandate to institute his economic policy known as Abenomics, which aims at reviving Japan's economy through monetary easing and strong public spending. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
So, how will Sunday's outcome affect the dynamics in Northeast Asia? Will it change the current South Korea-Japan ties? And what about Tokyo's relations with Beijing? Our Lee Ji-yoon takes a look.
Will Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe try to mend relations with Korea and China? Experts are not very hopeful. They say because Abe won in overwhelming fashion on Sunday, he's likely to forge ahead with his right-wing agenda. Abe denies that Japan forced Korean women into sexual slavery during its colonial rule of the Korean peninsula. This has angered the Korean government, which continues to ask for an official apology and compensation for the victims. Politicians within Abe's ruling party have also denied the 1937 Nanjing massacre, in which tens of thousands of Chinese civilians were killed by invading Japanese soldiers. The list goes on. His repeated visits of Yasukuni Shrine that honors Japanese war criminals, false claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in the East Sea, and efforts to revise the post-war constitution to militarize Japan. Experts say, though, that Japan does realize Korea and China as important economic and political partners, which means there's still a chance Abe might try a bit harder to deal with existing problems. As for now, eyes are on what Abe will say and do during the 70th anniversary of the end of the Second World War next year, and whether he will visit the Yasukuni Shrine again or offer a sincere apology for Japan's wartime atrocities. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
In 2 days' time, North Korea will observe the 3rd-year anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Ahead of the national event, the regime made clear that the true era of current leader Kim Jong-un, son of Kim Jong-il, will begin now. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
North Korea has pledged to open a new era under Kim Jong-un's leadership. Ahead of the 3-year anniversary of the death of former leader Kim Jong-il, the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper on Sunday said the last 3 years had been sacred and passed like a hot fireball. Listing the young Kim's Pyeongjin line, or the dual development of nuclear arms and the economy, and major construction projects, it labeled the last 3 years as historic, during which time the regime had become prosperous, both ideologically and materially. Pyongyang remains isolated from the world, but it has made strides in its military capabilities. North Korea has been increasing its accuracy rate of missiles through constant test firings, launching 111 missiles through 19 rounds this year. A senior South Korean military official says North Korea is running 30 nuclear-related institutions like nuclear power plants, and speculates Pyongyang possesses around 20 nuclear weapons, which is more than double the amount from a few years ago. Another official notes the North is close to being capable of attaching a miniaturized nuclear device on a Scud missile that could reach all corners of the Korean peninsula. Experts say North Korea's confidence level is higher than ever when it comes to war readiness, and that the regime could go ahead with a 4th nuclear test next year if things don't go their way on the diplomatic front. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
The U.S. government will be providing more support for North Korean human rights issues this coming year. Included in the $1.1 trillion funding bill passed by the U.S. Congress over the weekend is a plan to provide financial assistance for building and managing a database on the political prison camp system in North Korea. More support will also be given for the protection of North Korean defectors taking refuge in China. However, Congress will continue to ban any direct financial support to North Korea. The last remaining symbol of inter-Korean cooperation, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, celebrates the 10th anniversary of its opening this month. The joint factory park apparently has not reached its full potential just yet. Kana Kim has the details.
In December 2004, 1,000 pots were the first things to roll off the production line at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex. Since that day 10 years ago, the complex has grown beyond all recognition. In the early days, there were just 15 South Korean businesses. Now, there are more than 120. The increase in the number of North Koreans is even more startling, jumping from 6,000 to well over 50,000 today. In terms of its economic benefits to the Koreas, South Korea has raked in more than $3 billion, while the North has brought in some $380 million since 2004. Now, that's not to say the Kaesong complex hasn't had its bumps along the way. The park is currently spread over some 3.3 million square kilometers. That might sound big, but that's just 5% of the original plan laid out. And just last year, Pyongyang unilaterally halted operations for 5 months amid heightened inter-Korean tensions. Despite the obstacles and unresolved issues, analysts say the industrial park is priceless in many ways.
The inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex is a place that goes beyond merely learning about North Korea's market economy. It's where the two Koreas realize economic cooperation, and it's a small area where the two Koreas have reunified.
Professor Yang notes a private consortium needs to be established for the two Koreas to push for the globalization of the Kaesong complex. Now, if the joint park ever reaches its full potential, watchers say it could bring in over $68 billion worth of benefits for both Koreas. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The first day of the National Assembly's extraordinary session was dominated by recent allegations that some of the president's aides were abusing their influence in the administration running the country. And with President Park's losing public support over this scandal, the National Assembly Speaker has some strong words criticizing the president's communication skills. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
During an interpellation session Monday, Prime Minister Chung Eun-won flatly turned down allegations that neither President Park's brother Ji-man nor her former aide Chung Yun-hye could ever have the power or connections to call the shots behind the scenes. The opposition party claimed one of President Park's secretaries had failed to report a leaked document on her brother and his family back in May. Lawmaker Park Bum-gye grilled the Justice Minister over why the accounts of leaked documents were left unreported to the president. The Justice Minister, in response, said the prosecution was on the case. The 8 allegations have complicated matters for the rival parties, which had agreed on a month-long extraordinary session to pass a list of economy-related bills. Meeting with the top 3 members of the cabinet, National Assembly Speaker Chung Eui-hwa also cast worries about President Park's lack of communication with the parliament. Chung said the president should actively communicate with the parliament for the good of the nation, adding if the president is seeking parliamentary support to pass economy-related bills, she should make the request herself either by phone or in person at her office. While President Park remained tight-lipped, pollster Realmeter said her support rating dropped nearly 7 percentage points, hitting the 30% range for the first time since she took office early last year. Negative feedback on how the president is running the country, on the other hand, jumped more than 6 percentage points to record 52%. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
And President Park Geun-hye's brother, Ji-man, who is another heavyweight alleged to be in rivalry with Chung Yun-hye, appeared for questioning on this Monday. Prosecutors plan to probe him about his links to the so-called Group of 7, alleged to have created the documents that say Mr. Chung has been exercising influence over the running of state affairs. And in other story of the day, President Park Geun-hye has made it clear that she wants the 2018 Winter Olympic Games to be held in Korea's Pyeongchang and Pyeongchang alone. In a meeting with the senior presidential secretaries on this Monday, President Park said holding events outside of Pyeongchang was out of the question since construction on the venues had already started. She added that Korea had put in too much effort in 3 bids to host the Winter Winter Games to let it go to waste. The International Olympic Committee last week suggested that Korea consider holding certain events outside the country to cut costs. Korea's central bank has released new figures that provide a more comprehensive understanding of the country's economy using new international standards. They show that the share of the country's gross national income held by households has been on a gradual decline from 79% back in 1975 to 61% in 2013. The share held by corporations, on the other hand, has nearly tripled over that period to 26% last year. As for the trading sector, the new figures show just how reliant Korea has become on exports. Back in 1953, exports accounted for just 3% of GNI, but last year the figure was at nearly 56%. For this week's Industry Insight, we take a look at Korea's defense industry. South Korea has been a major buyer of Western military hardware, but it's reported to have seen growing exports in recent years. Our Kim Hyun-bin has more.
South Korea's defense exports have ballooned over the past 5 years or so. Until the early 2000s, the country's defense industry exports were mainly small arms and supplies, such as boots and helmets. The situation today is vastly different. In recent years, South Korea has been exporting heavy-duty military arms and vehicles, including fighter jets, submarines, and destroyers. This shift has dramatically boosted the nation's defense exports in dollar terms. In 2006, South Korea broke the $250 million mark for the first time. By 2011, this had jumped to $2.3 billion. And last year, the figure topped $3.4 billion. So what triggered the boom in sales?
Our prices compare favorably, and the nations that buy from South Korea are satisfied with what they get. All of our defense-related exports are used by the South Korean Army and are proven for battle. Also, as a lot of countries in the Southeast Asia are locked in territorial disputes with China, many now buy their defense-related equipment and supplies from South Korea instead of China.
The spillover effects from the defense deals to the economy have been sizable. Take, for example, the sale of 24 Fa-50 fighter jets to Iraq in 2013. Now, this deal, worth over $1.1 billion, will develop a chain of suppliers networks and after-sale deals that are estimated to total more than $4 billion. This project has also created roughly 36,000 jobs. While this sounds great, South Korea still has a long way to go to reach the level of the major players in the industry. The country's exports accounted for a mere 0.8% of the world's total defense exports. The United States, Russia, Britain, Germany, and France together have a grip on 3/4 of the total global arms market. And the dominant powers aren't sitting back as South Korea tries to sharpen its competitive edge.
The United States, France, Britain, and Germany are watching South Korea very closely as they are competitors in the international arms market. Koreans should have pride in their defense industry and support government policies that make our country more competitive on the global stage.
South Korea has been successful so far, but to sustain and increase its share of the multi-billion-dollar arms market, the industry needs to diversify.
South Korea should open up to more markets in the third world. Most of them are in territorial conflicts and in need of naval equipment such as combat ships. In the future, we could make up to 3% of the total defense exports. But we need to invent new weaponry and upgrade our Korean-style weapons to meet global standards.
Competition is fiercer than ever, with Japan and China jumping into the defense market at full speed. For that reason, experts say the Korean government and the public need to stay committed and focused to maintain their growth in the international market. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And taking a look at other international stories making headlines, the police in Hong Kong have arrested several pro-democracy activists there as authorities clear out the last main protest site in the heart of the city. And to tell us more, we turn back to Paul Lee at the news center. Paul, these demonstrations have marked a significant chapter in the fight for democratic rights in this Chinese-controlled territory. So what's next?
Well, it's certainly the end of a historic chapter of the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, but many of the student leaders have vowed to push forward until Beijing meets their demands for universal suffrage. About 100 police officers swept into Causeway Bay on this Monday to dismantle barricades and tents as most protesters scrambled to leave. Some remaining demonstrators were forcibly escorted by authorities from the site after refusing orders to vacate the occupied area while shouting slogans of civil disobedience.
About this is because although the occupation will end, but our fight towards true democracy will not end. And in the future, I believe that the LACO will ban the political reform package issued by central government.
As the dust finally settles, activists and politicians believe China will likely launch a covert campaign across the former British colony, especially its judiciary, media and university systems, to prevent another potential uprising.
And in Turkey, Paul, police have raided opposition media outlets in what President Tayyip Erdogan has described as the country's latest crackdown on terrorism. This action has drawn some strong criticism from the European Union and other civic groups. Who exactly was targeted in these raids?
Well, the majority of the media organizations that were hit by authorities reportedly had close ties with Fethullah Gulen, a U.S.-based Muslim cleric. Gulen was a former ally of President Erdogan, but has lived in a self-imposed exile for the last 15 years. Sunday's raids across the country also saw the arrest of 24 people, including top media executives and 2 former police chiefs. Erdogan has labeled the group as a terrorist network, accusing them of conspiring to oust him from power. But some Turkish journalists see the raids as an attempt to silence the media.
This is an operation to silence the opposition and the media. Both Saman newspaper and Samanyolu TV, their editors and executives are publishing the most serious stories on corruption and the graft probe. It seems that Mr. Tayyip Erdogan is threatening the media to silence his opponents.
Top European Union officials have condemned the mass arrest of media representatives, saying the move goes against European values. The EU said that Turkey, which is a candidate to join the 28-member bloc, needed to show full respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights.
And finally, a medical student from South Africa has been crowned Miss World 2014. Paul, these are some amazing women representing, many of them artists, humanitarians, and global ambassadors. So tell us about this year's winner.
Well, 22-year-old Rolene Strauss is a fourth-year medical student who's also a professional model with a high ambition to break into big business. She's also the 3rd South African beauty queen ever to win Miss World. Strauss was able to beat out some 120 other contestants during the glittering ceremony on Sunday in London, where the original contest was staged back in 1951. During her acceptance speech, she thanked her parents and said she was proud of her home country.
You know, sitting here, I feel like I have all the South African hearts inside of me. They've been so supportive, and I really would like to think that I'm shining the light back in our country. You know, we've come so far, celebrating 20 years of democracy this year, being an example for the rest of the world that unity is possible.
Organizers say the 64th annual Miss World pageant was broadcast live around the world with an estimated audience of over 2 billion. During her year-long reign, Strauss will travel the globe to support various humanitarian causes, including the pageant's own charity group, Beauty with a Purpose. Chetty?
Certainly beautiful there. All right, let's leave it there for now. Paul, thank you so much for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hello and happy Monday. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather updates. We begin with some news of heavy snowfall advisories which have been issued for areas in the central regions, while Seoul is getting sporadic flurries as well as thunder. Now brace yourselves for more snow, as parts of Gangwon-do province may be in for more than 20 centimeters of heavy snowfall, while most parts of the central regions are looking at about 2 to 8 centimeters. The snow will begin to pile up as temperatures drop overnight, especially in the inland areas of the central regions as well as mountains down south. Other than that, elsewhere, Tuesday should be a clear winter day. On to the readings. Seoul remains relatively cold at -3. Gwangju makes it to 3. Busan reaches 6. On to other regions. Daejeon makes it to -1. Jeju and Dokdo hit 7. Those are the updates I have for you now. Stay warm. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.